"Do not go home yet," Rosa whispered. "Your husband brought another woman into your bedroom. I had just left my in-laws at Augusta Regional Airport." My memorial bracelet rested beside my phone. The metal was cold from the air conditioner, but my palm had already begun to sweat. Rosa's voice shook so badly that I had to ask her to repeat herself. "Colonel Rowan, please pull over somewhere safe. Then check your security cameras." I turned into a gas station 3 miles from Fort Eisenhower, parked beneath a broken light, and opened the home system on my tablet. The bedroom feed loaded first. Eric was there with Brooke Lang, the chief financial officer of his company. She wore the blue robe I had brought home after my final deployment. I watched him touch her face in the room where 22 years earlier he promised I would always belong. Then the two of them left the bed and walked into my office. Eric opened my small fireproof cabinet while Brooke searched the desk. "Find the security key," he told her. "By Monday, everyone at the base will believe she approved the contract." Brooke asked what would happen if I found out. Eric laughed softly. "My parents will say she has been unstable for months. Command will believe them before they believe her. My marriage died on that screen in less than a minute, but the evidence that destroyed Eric appeared 17 minutes later. I still keep the tablet, although I no longer watch the bedroom footage. I keep it because Rosa's warning stopped me from driving into a carefully prepared trap. So continue whatever quiet task is in your hands and stay with me, because 3 months earlier, I still believed distance was the only problem in my marriage. My name is Claire Rowan. I had served 27 years in the United States Army, protecting communication networks. Soldiers depended on when ordinary systems failed. During one deployment, our command center took a direct hit, and I stayed at the damaged console until the final evacuation team confirmed every person was accounted for. A piece of metal injured my shoulder that night, but the wound I remembered most belonged to a young specialist named Dana Price. I could not get a medical team to her in time. Her identification bracelet stayed in my desk after I returned home. I carried it on difficult days because it reminded me that systems mattered only when they protected people. Eric never understood why I kept it. At business dinners, he introduced me as someone who handled computers for the Army. He preferred that description because it made my career sound useful but small. His own company, Rowan Secure Systems, had begun pursuing a contract to protect housing data for military families. The contract was worth nearly $15 million. Eric wanted me to look through the proposal, but I refused because my position created an obvious conflict. He said I was being rigid. I told him integrity became expensive only after someone decided it was inconvenient. At home, our conversations had grown shorter. Eric traveled often with Brooke, changed passwords he had shared for years, and began showering immediately after returning from trips. I noticed, but I also knew suspicion could become its own kind of prison. I chose trust because marriage required room for ordinary explanations. The first explanation arrived on a credit card statement. A hotel in Savannah charged our account on the same weekend Eric claimed he was attending a conference in Atlanta. He blamed an accounting error. Brooke later sent me a gift basket with a note thanking me for always sharing Eric with the company. The wording bothered me. When I mentioned it, Eric smiled and said years in cyber defense had trained me to see intrusions everywhere. His mother agreed. She said I no longer knew how to relax around people who loved me. His father suggested retirement before the Army made me permanently suspicious. Rosa noticed things they assumed she would ignore. She had cared for our home during deployments for more than 10 years. One afternoon, she found 2 wine glasses beside the sofa while I was on duty. Eric said he had entertained a client, then became angry when Rosa asked the client's name. A week later, he offered her extra money to take time off during the final contract submission. Rosa declined because I had asked her to help organize storage. Eric told me she was becoming intrusive and that we should replace her. I defended Rosa, but I did not ask why he wanted the house empty. The financial changes followed. Eric moved our mortgage payments into a new account managed by his company accountant. He said the arrangement would qualify us for a better rate. When I requested the documents, he accused me of treating him like a hostile network. At the same time, he began recording pieces of my private life. If I woke after a late telephone call, he noted that I had not slept. If a car backfired and I turned toward the sound, he called it a trauma response. His parents started asking whether I had spoken with a military psychologist. Brooke helped draft an email to a family attorney describing me as controlling and increasingly paranoid. I only noticed that people around Eric had begun speaking to me more slowly, as though my judgment had already become a family question. 2 weeks before the airport trip, Eric placed a document beside my breakfast plate. He called it a family acknowledgement, confirming that I knew his company was bidding on military work. The wording went much further. It described me as an informal advisor and stated that I had reviewed the company's security design. I pushed it back across the table. I cannot sign this. Eric's face tightened. It only confirms what you already know. I told him knowing a bid existed was not the same as approving its contents. His mother, who was staying with us, said a supportive wife would not humiliate her husband over technical language. The airport trip was suggested 3 days later. My in-laws said their rental car reservation had failed and asked me to drive them because Eric had an early meeting. I agreed. I remember his mother hugging me at the terminal and saying, "Try to rest today, Claire. You have seemed fragile lately." After seeing the camera feed, I did not drive home. I entered the secure parking area at Fort Eisenhower and downloaded every available recording to 2 protected locations. Rosa remained in the laundry room pretending to fold towels while Eric and Brooke searched my office. They found a black security key inside the fireproof cabinet. It did not access military systems. It authenticated my personal trust documents, home ownership records, and financial accounts. Brooke connected it to a laptop while Eric placed a proposal folder beside her. The camera captured the first page. My signature appeared beneath a statement claiming I had reviewed Rowan's secure systems and found no conflict with the military housing contract. I had never seen the page. Eric then called me and asked how far I was from home. I kept my voice level. I said an unexpected meeting had called me back to the installation. His relief came through the phone before he hit it. Less than a minute later, my camera access disappeared. Eric believed he had erased the witness, but both protected copies were already complete. That afternoon, he filed a complaint accusing me of using military cyber capabilities to monitor my husband and interfere with his company. My command temporarily removed me from contract-related work while the allegation was reviewed. Eric had betrayed me, stolen my identity, and positioned himself as the victim before I could speak. Rosa left the house only after Eric and Brooke drove away. She met me near an all-night diner and handed me a black flash drive she had found behind the washing machine. A white label across the front read, "Final Certification, Claire Rowan." I opened the first folder on an isolated computer. It contained the forged contract documents, a scan of my identification card, and a file named Contingency, if Claire discovers the relationship. The first page described how Eric would command that I was unstable. The second listed my in-laws as witnesses. The second page listed my in-laws as witnesses, but the third page explained what they were expected to say. They would describe me as sleepless, suspicious, emotionally volatile, and obsessed with Eric's business. Their airport trip was not a favor. It was the final piece of a timeline designed to prove they had been away while I supposedly broke into my husband's files. Rosa sat beside me in the diner booth while the isolated computer loaded the remaining folders. She had ordered coffee but had not touched it. "I should have called you when he offered me money to leave," she said. I told her the truth. "You called before I walked into the trap. That is what matters now." The flash drive contained more than forged contract papers. It held a scanned copy of my retired identification card, photographs of the black security key drafts of statements for Eric's attorney, and a calendar tracking every hour I would be away from the house. My duty schedule had been marked in red. Rosa's cleaning days had been marked in blue. One spreadsheet listed the contract as worth nearly $15 million. Another showed that Eric's company had less than 7 weeks of operating cash. He needed the military contract to avoid collapse. He had not asked me to help his company. He had built a plan in which my rank, my reputation, and my signature would help him without my consent. The most painful file was not the one about Brooke. It was titled Mental Health Narrative. Eric had collected ordinary moments from our marriage and rewritten them as symptoms. A night when I stayed awake because a soldier's family needed emergency housing became chronic insomnia. My reaction to a fire alarm became evidence of instability. He had turned every private weakness I trusted him with in a language that could damage my career. I copied the drive, sealed the original in an evidence bag, and wrote down the time Rosa handed it to me. Then I called Brigadier General Tessa Monroe and requested an immediate private meeting. I did not describe the affair over the telephone. I said I had evidence of a forged certification connected to an active military contract. General Monroe met me before sunrise in a secure conference room. She had commanded people long enough to know that emotion and unreliability were not the same thing. She listened without interrupting, then asked only 3 questions. Who created the video? The cameras belong to my household account. Where are the original files stored? In 2 protected locations with automatic timestamps. Who touched the flash drive after Rosa found it? Rosa, then me, nobody else. General Monroe nodded. A broken marriage is personal. A forged military certification is institutional. Do not mix them and do not give him time to mix them for you. She temporarily removed me from all contract decisions. Eric later called that proof that command distrusted me. In reality, the order protected the investigation from any claim that I had influenced it. An inspector took custody of the flash drive, verified the camera exports, and began comparing the forged signature with authenticated samples. My first instinct was to return home and demand an explanation. General Monroe advised against it. Eric believed he controlled the timeline. Every hour he remained confident was another hour in which he might continue writing, sending, and storing evidence. I moved into temporary quarters on the installation and communicated with him only by text. I said an unexpected review required me to remain near the office. Eric responded with concern so polished that I nearly admired the performance. "You have seemed overwhelmed lately," he wrote. "Please let me help you before this becomes worse." I saved the message. That night, Rosa and I returned to the diner. She finally drank the coffee she had ordered the morning before. She told me Eric had offered her $3,000 to visit family during the submission week. When she refused, he asked whether she had ever considered retirement. He wanted every honest person out of the house, she said. You were the one person he forgot to fear, I answered. The inspection team opened the evidence one layer at a time. The signature on the contract certification had been copied from an insurance renewal I signed 2 years earlier. The forged page claimed I served as an undisclosed advisor to Rowan Secure Systems and had reviewed its protection plan. System logs showed the page had been created on Brooke's laptop. The upload occurred while I was documented inside a secure room at Fort Eisenhower, where personal devices were prohibited. I could not have used the computer approved the document remotely or sent the file at the recorded time. The black security key revealed another betrayal. It did not connect to military systems, but it authenticated my personal trust, the deed to our home, and several shared financial accounts. Eric had used it to support a loan application secured against the house. The requested loan exceeded $600,000. I had never approved it. Bank records showed the funds were intended for Eric's company, not home improvements or family expenses. The application described me as a willing guarantor and included another copied signature. Without the camera, Eric might have claimed I gave him the key. The footage showed Brooke removing it from my locked cabinet. The inspector separated the recordings into 2 categories. The bedroom images remained private and were preserved only for my divorce attorney. The later footage showing the office search forged documents and Eric's statements about command became part of the official inquiry. I refused to let the affair footage become public entertainment. Eric's betrayal belonged in the divorce record. His fraud belonged before the institution he had attempted to deceive. Pain did not become more truthful merely because a larger audience watched it. Brooke denied everything during her first interview. She said Eric told her I had approved the contract and that our marriage had ended privately. She claimed she believed the security key belonged to the company. Then investigators showed her a folder Eric had prepared in case the scheme failed. The folder blamed Brooke for the forged signature, the stolen key, and the false certification. It described her as an ambitious employee who had manipulated a distracted executive. Eric had planned to sacrifice her exactly as he planned to discredit me. Brooke requested another interview. She admitted the affair and confirmed that she knew my signature had been copied. She also knew my in-laws had arranged the airport trip to keep me away. Eric told her I would never challenge him publicly because I cared too much about my military reputation. Brooke surrendered text messages, hotel receipts, financial drafts, and a recording in which Eric ordered her to disable the camera account. She also produced a proposed sale agreement for our home, prepared before the loan had even been approved. Her cooperation did not make her innocent. She had entered my home worn, my robe helped steal my key, and participated in forgery. The evidence only defined the part each person had chosen to play. The messages from my in-laws added another layer. Their flight had been canceled the night before I drove them to the airport. They never intended to leave Georgia. After I dropped them at the terminal, they took a hotel shuttle and waited nearby for Eric's call. His mother texted him, "She believes we are gone. You have until noon." His father replied, "Make sure the office looks untouched." I read those messages alone in my temporary room. The affair broke my heart, but that sentence changed my understanding of family. They had watched me carry their bags, thanked me for the ride, and sent me toward a house where their son was preparing to steal my identity. My attorney delivered a notice stating that I would leave the marital home and claim no authority over Eric's company. We did not mention the forged loan or the contract investigation. Eric interpreted restraint as surrender. He told relatives I was suffering a breakdown. My in-laws repeated that I had become paranoid after years in military service. Eric's attorney requested that my access to financial accounts be limited for my own protection. I signed a formal recusal from every part of the contract review. That document pleased Eric more than anything else. He believed the only officer capable of identifying the technical fraud had removed herself. What he did not understand was that my recusal created the independent process General Monroe needed. It prevented him from arguing that the review was marital retaliation. Every decision would now come from investigators, acquisition officials, and the commanding general. As the hearing approached, Eric sent one final message. "We can still fix our marriage if you stop attacking my work." I stared at the sentence until I recognized its purpose. He wanted a written response he could present as emotional or threatening. I gave him none. The contract integrity hearing took place 12 days after Rosa's call. Eric arrived with 2 attorneys and the confidence of a man who believed embarrassment was the worst evidence against him. Brooke entered through another door and sat beside federal counsel. I came in last. My memorial bracelet rested beneath my uniform sleeve. In my bag was a sealed envelope containing the old house key and a filed divorce petition. I placed the envelope on the table without opening it. General Monroe reviewed the first pages of the proposal, then looked toward Eric. "Before we discuss the contract," she said, "who authenticated Colonel Rowan's signature while she was documented inside this installation?" Eric turned toward Brooke. For the first time since the camera footage began, she refused to look at him. Brooke kept her eyes on the table while Eric's attorney answered for him. He said the certification had been completed remotely through an approved company process. General Monroe asked for the name of the person who witnessed my approval. The attorney opened his folder, searched 2 pages, and finally admitted that no witness had been identified. A technician activated the display behind the hearing panel. The certification appeared first, followed by its creation history. The forged signature had been inserted from Brooke's laptop at 10:43 that morning. At the same minute, installation records showed me inside a secure conference room where personal devices were prohibited. General Monroe allowed the timestamps to remain on the screen before asking Eric how I could have signed from 2 places at once. He said I might have approved the document earlier. The examiner then displayed the insurance form from which my signature had been copied. Even the small scanning shadow beneath the final letter appeared on both documents. Eric shifted in his chair and looked toward his attorneys. I placed both hands around the sealed envelope containing my house key. I had once believed surrendering that key meant losing my home. Sitting there, I understood that a building could remain in my name long after it stopped being a safe place. The examiner presented the false statement identifying me as a secret advisor to Rowan Secure Systems. Contract reviewers confirmed that my supposed participation had increased the company's score and helped it survive the first evaluation round. Without my name, Eric's proposal would not have reached the hearing. General Monroe asked whether I had ever reviewed the company's security plan. I answered that I had refused every request because of the conflict with my position. Eric interrupted and said, "Husbands and wives discussed work informally." General Monroe reminded him that private conversation did not create a military certification. The financial investigator opened the loan application next. More than $600,000 had been requested against our house using the black security key taken from my office. The application carried a second copied signature and directed the money into Eric's failing company. Eric claimed I had given him permission to use the key. The room remained quiet while the office camera footage appeared on the screen. General Monroe had excluded every private image from the bedroom. The first visible frame showed Brooke opening my locked cabinet while Eric watched the hallway. 17 minutes after the moment that ended my marriage, his recorded voice entered the hearing room. By Monday, Command will think she approved everything. Brooke could be heard asking whether I might challenge the document. My parents will say she has been unstable for months, Eric answered. People believe a concerned family before they believe an angry wife. My husband listened to his own certainty echo across the room. He reached for a glass of water, but his hand struck the rim and sent a small wave across the table. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt the final weight of knowing that none of it had been accidental. Brooke then gave her statement. She admitted helping create the false certification, entering my office, and using my security key. She also confirmed that Eric had instructed his parents to keep me away from the house while he prepared the documents. She produced the messages arranging the airport trip. My in-laws knew their flight had been canceled before I collected them. They had thanked me, hugged me at the terminal, and waited in a nearby hotel while Eric used the empty house. Eric's attorney tried to describe Brooke as the sole architect of the scheme. Federal counsel opened the contingency folder Eric had written. It blamed Brooke for every forged document if the contract failed, just as another folder blamed my mental health if I objected. Brooke looked at him for the first time. You plan to destroy both of us, she said. General Monroe did not allow the hearing to become an argument between them. She asked the clerk to read the conclusion of the technical review. The signature was fraudulent. The claimed military consultation never occurred. The financial guarantee was unauthorized. The security key had been taken without my permission. Then she addressed the complaint Eric filed against me. Investigators found no evidence that I used military resources to monitor him. The cameras were privately owned, and I accessed them only after Rosa warned me about activity inside my home. My decision to preserve the recordings followed proper procedure. The complaint against my judgment was formally dismissed. General Monroe opened a second folder and read from my service record. She described the damaged command center where I had remained at my station until the last evacuation team confirmed every soldier was clear. The officer, Mr. Rowan described as unstable, remained composed under conditions most people in this room will never face, she said. Her restraint during this investigation reflects the same discipline. I lowered my eyes toward the memorial bracelet beneath my sleeve. I wish Dana Price had lived long enough for that night to be only an old story between us. Public recognition could not change what I had lost, but it prevented Eric from turning my grief into evidence against me. The panel disqualified Rowan Secure Systems from the contract. The nearly $15 million proposal was removed from consideration, and the company was suspended from federal bidding while the investigation continued. The forged certifications and loan records were referred to the appropriate authorities. The lender froze the mortgage transaction before the funds could be released. Eric's company entered restructuring within weeks. Brooke lost her position, although her cooperation was included in the official record. My in-laws were required to provide their phones and testify about the false airport trip. I opened the envelope after the hearing and placed the house key on the table beside my divorce petition. Eric stared at it as though I were giving him what he wanted. "You can keep the house," I told him. "You cannot keep my name, my service, or my silence." He sent apologies through 3 different attorneys during the following months. Each one spoke about stress, business pressure, and mistakes that had gone too far. None called the plan by its proper name. I responded only through my lawyer and never met with him privately again. His mother came to see me after investigators confronted her with the messages. She handed over a second phone Eric had asked her to hide. She said she had not known Brooke would be in my bedroom or that my signature would be forged. You may not have known every detail I said. You knew I was being removed from my own home so your son could act behind my back. She cried and asked whether I could forgive her. I told her forgiveness was possible, but access was not automatic. She had to tell the full truth, stop describing me as unstable, and surrender every key she held. We would not return to the family relationship we once pretended to have. 18 months later, the divorce was complete. I moved into a smaller house beneath tall Georgia pines close enough to the installation to hear morning training in the distance. I left the blue robe, the bedroom furniture, and every object that carried more betrayal than memory. Rosa no longer worked as my housekeeper. She became the paid coordinator of a program we created for military women and spouses facing digital surveillance, identity theft, or financial control. She taught people to notice changed passwords and hidden accounts. I taught them how to preserve records without placing themselves in danger. One quiet morning, we sat on my new porch with coffee while I opened the old camera application for the final time. I transferred the evidence archive into protected legal storage, confirmed the receipt, and removed the application from my tablet. I did not erase the truth. I only stopped carrying its doorway in my hand. My marriage ended on a screen, but my life did not. Betrayal enters easily when trust is taught never to ask for identification. Silence is dangerous when it protects a liar, but it becomes powerful when it protects the evidence. Rosa did not save my marriage. She saved me from walking blindly into its ruins. Has someone ever warned you when telling the truth placed them at risk? Write their name or their role below, because honoring that courage may help another person recognize it in time. I would be honored if you shared this story with someone who needs to remember that discovering betrayal is not the end of a life. Wherever you are listening tonight, I hope your home feels safe, your judgment feels trusted, and your next chapter belongs entirely to you.